Ever since April 25th, 1846, 3 years worth of fighting for rights, one man goes on a mission to fight for freedom. His name is Miguel Hidalgo, a Mexican priest and a revolutionist.
Father Miguel Hidalgo led a rebellion of about 18,000 impoverished Indians and Mexicans against Spain in the hope of improving living conditions, which eventually grew and helped lead to Mexican independence.
After Texas joined the United States in 1846, a boundary dispute broke out almost immediately between the United States and Mexico, the country from which Texas had won its independence a decade earlier. The United States said the southern boundary of the state should be the Rio Grande, which was further south of the original boundary set by the Nueces River on April 25, 1846. After the U.S. cavalry ignored an order from the Mexican army to retreat to the Nueces River, and instead advanced south to the Rio Grande, fighting broke out 3 weeks later.
President James K. Polk won the election of 1844. Texas and Oregon were soon annexed as U.S. territories. Tensions between Mexico and the U.S. increased, especially over the border issue, the Nueces River or the Rio Grande. When Mexico refused to meet with U.S. diplomat John Slidell and turned down the $50 million offer for California and New Mexico, going to war was just a matter of time. General Zachary Taylor's men were fired upon at the Rio Grande near the dispute border,
And Congress declared a war on Mexico.
The war began, 1846. Fighting continued for more than a year and ended in September 1847. In February 1848, the two countries signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. The treaty recognized Texas as a U.S. state and set a large chunk of land, about half the area that belonged to the Mexican Republic, to the United States for the cost of $15 million. The Mexican Cession included land that would later become California, Nevada, and Utah, as well as portions of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming.
The treaty also stated that Mexicans remaining in the state would be permitted to become U.S. citizens and that they would be allowed to keep the property. However, the treaty was never fully honored. In the decades following the signing of the treaty, Mexican Americans were stripped of nearly 20 million acres of their land by American businessmen, ranchers, and railroad companies, as well as by the U.S. Department of the Interior and the Department of Agriculture.
President James K. Polk's goal was to claim the valuable areas of the Republic and the Mexican-controlled West Coast. Later that year, Polk sent an offer to Mexico for around $25 million for the Rio Grande area, along with California, Nevada, Utah, and parts of Arizona, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Colorado. But Polk's grand strategy included expanding the nation's borders from sea to shining sea. Before any of this could happen, President James K. Polk dealt with the annexation of Texas, which was all about adding Texas to the United States. Immediately after the annexation of Texas, Polk sent a diplomat, John Slidell, to Mexico to negotiate 3 items: the border, debates owned by Mexican government to U.S. citizens, and the purchase of California and New Mexico for as much as $50 million before Mexico sold it to Great Britain. The thing that inspired Polk was to expand the nation's borders from sea to shining sea, and so he did. He loved the land. Within 4 months of receiving statehood, Mexico and the United States would be at war. The Mexican-American War, also known as the Mexican War, followed in the wake of continuous 1845 annexation of Texas, which Mexico claimed as part of its sovereign territory.
In February 1848, the United States and Mexico signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which officially ended the war and forced Mexico to turn over much of its northern territory to the United States.
The Mexican Secession officially ended the Mexican-American War and was signed on February 2, 1848, Guadalupe Hidalgo, a city to which the Mexican government had fled. The major concession from Mexico in the secession was its exchange of 55% of its territory to the United States for a sum of $14 million as a result of the treaty, including the official recognition of the state of Texas. The United States had enlarged its territorial boundaries by more than 60%, and it stretched its borders from sea to shining sea.
In the war, America only had 13,000 dead soldiers, most because of disease, and was given great practice for the Civil War. Also, outside countries now respected America more since it had made no major blunders during the war and had proven its fighting power. However, more land could lead up to more slavery. David Wilmot of Pennsylvania introduced his Wilmot Proviso, which stated that slavery should never exist in any of the Mexican secession territories. Although it failed, the importance of the Wilmot Proviso lay in the fact that it opened old wounds in those slavery. In other words, it opened a can of worms by raising the question, will we have slavery in the new territories? This question led up to the Civil War in 1861. Although Miguel Hidalgo died July 30th, 1811, he was best known as a leader, the father of the Mexican independence, and/or a Mexican leader. He died as a hero.